Ron asked a good question. He's got chronic fatigue syndrome as the claim. And I'm sorry for putting that out there with your name, Ron. I just wanted to make sure because this is an interesting one. Service connection was denied because the medical evidence of record failed to show that his disability was clinically diagnosed. He's got a separation exam from service showing fatigue. He's got a comp and pen showing fatigue. We've got some chronic fatigue and diagnosis of chronic fatigue after separation, it looks like. And the in-service event is anthrax and other vaccines. And you've got documentation about how those relate to chronic fatigue. So you've got a bunch of things going on here first. So remember, and we're focusing entirely on these upstream elements. You've got eligibility, I'm assuming, under control. What we're looking at in this case is event in service, current diagnosis, and nexus. So let's take a look at the event. Anthrax and other vaccines. That's good to have that event in there, but you want to learn more about chronic fatigue and see if there's other things that happened in your military that could contribute to that. Not saying that the anthrax isn't a good basis, but you want more. You want more because a lot of times the VA sees these anthrax claims and they're like, well, everybody got the vaccine, and they kind of look at these vaccine and vaccination claims with a raised eyebrow, and frankly, they look at chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia with a raised eyebrow anyway. So you want to look to see if there's other things that might have happened that you can add to that as additional events to kind of add a little bit more muscle to it. The other thing that I would talk to you about, you've got the diagnosis of chronic fatigue changed over time. So what they would have used to decide a diagnosis in 2001 is different from what would cause a diagnosis of chronic fatigue today. And that gets sticky because A, the VA doesn't know about that. Fibromyalgia is the same thing. There used to be this old pressure point test for diagnosing fibromyalgia. No longer the case. It was too subjective. Most folks didn't know how to do it. So one of the medical associations changed the diagnostic criteria to be much more objective. VA has no clue. And so a lot of things that should be diagnosed as fibro are not because they're still using the old pressure point methodology from, I think it was almost 4 or 5 years ago. But same thing with chronic fatigue is the diagnostic criteria for that condition have changed. And so if you've got a diagnosis of chronic fatigue in 2001, if you've got a nice clean diagnosis, then you need a diagnosis today because you need that first element, which is a current disability. And then because you've got the old diagnosis, you've got the in-service event, right? So all you need now is a nexus opinion. And your nexus opinion when you have two diagnoses is that it's the same condition. What does the doctor writing that opinion look to for that? Frequency, chronicity, and severity of symptomatology between the two diagnoses. Now, let's say you don't have the diagnosis in service, that all you've got is the symptoms in service, and you've got this diagnosis today. Okay? So remember, the diagnostic criteria have changed, so that actually works to your advantage because what you can do is you can have your doctor take a look and say, here's the symptoms that he had in service. And if I looked at it today using the diagnostic criteria for chronic fatigue, then I would have said that that is chronic fatigue back then. And that is sufficient as a nexus opinion. They've just got to do a lot of explaining as to why that's the case. Now, let's flip that.